Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Pod.
Well, this is a story all about how Oscar night got flipped, turned upside down. I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there, as we try and take you through the highs and many, many lows of the 2022 Academy Awards here on Filibuster. I'm Dallas King, and with me as always is birthday boy Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. I didn't anticipate I'd have so much to say about the Oscars this year, and yet here we are.
Neither did I. Yeah, we were planning to take a week off so you could celebrate your birthday in peace, but I had to drag you back on because turning the clock back to Sunday, I was considering paying for a 3-month trial for Sky Cinema, as I know that Everything Everywhere All at Once will be making its debut there, and only there potentially in April, and figured, well, I could watch the Oscars. But then I remembered that Alex Zane covers the UK portion of it, and felt that it was going to be a rather uneventful ceremony, given how everything bar Best Picture had been pretty much sewn up beforehand. So I decided to go to bed. Suffice to say that when I woke up in the morning and checked my phone, I had the same feeling I had every year that when I turn off the Super Bowl after the halftime show because one team is 21 points clear, it looks like game over, only to turn out to have missed an incredible comeback. So given Lee and I slept through the ceremony, we've got a special guest joining us who managed to stay up for the long haul. We welcome Amy Smith, awards editor for InSession Film, writer for Next Best Picture, and general all-around Oscar nerd and expert. Amy, welcome to the show. How are you? Have you recovered?
I'm still not recovered. Bear in mind, last week I also had COVID, so it's just been a 1-2 punch.
Well, I'm not going to ask you to rate which was worse, COVID or staying up and watching the ceremony just yet. But I mean, there is a lot to talk about. I think we'll start off with some of the highs, and I want to get everyone's thoughts on, well, essentially the big story what should have been the big story of the night, Coda winning Best Picture. This was basically a huge win for representation, and this was a film with a predominantly sort of deaf cast, win for sort of captioning stuff. It was also Apple's first win for Best Picture, coming at the expense of Netflix, who've been trying for several years to become the first streaming service to take a Best Picture Oscar. So, Amy, let's come to you. You were watching it on the night. How did it feel to see Coda win? And had you picked that as the best winner, or had you gone with Power of the Dog?
I went to Power, and I know I should have gone to Coda because that's where momentum was building. But I was stubborn, and I was like, "How is a film that's only got 2 other Oscar nominations gonna beat something with 12?" I was like, "There's no way that's happening." But here we are. I am happy about it. I've just spent the past 6 months doing my dissertation on deaf representation and deaf storytelling, such as Sound of Metal. So this is definitely a win for representation, and it's going to be interesting to see what Hollywood does now with giving this audience accessibility because of this win. I really hope that they capitalize on this moment and say, yeah, we need to let this audience be a part of the film community now.
Yep. And Lee, what did you make of the result?
It was kind of coming, to be honest. Well, I had a couple of films that I would have preferred to see the Best Picture go to. I've kind of come to that stage in my life where, yeah, whatever wins, and so on. It's no skin off my back. And, I agree with what Amy said. Representation matters. If, like, Power of the Dog, which was a lot of people's favourites, or Don't Look Up, or June, Drive My Car, even Licorice Pizza, which I wanted to win perhaps more than anything in that list, had won. Yeah, it's kind of business as usual and so on, whereas Coda is that important representation. And, I saw Coda for the first time at Sundance London, and I didn't really know anything going in, and I remember just finding the first 25 minutes, just as someone that does not like Pitch Perfect, to be quite horrific. But then after that, as someone that loves Joni Mitchell and has friends that have hearing loss conditions, Sound of Metal and other films like that always give me an insight into the challenges that they face in a way that it can be sometimes hard for me to put myself in their shoes. So, Coda has a huge, important kind of momentum behind it. And good luck. I hope more people discover it. And I've heard it, from people I would never have expected to see it, have seen it and responded well to it. So yeah, congratulations to Coda, and in particular to the Best Supporting Actor win.
Yeah. Do either of you think that we might see another cinema run for the film? Because I think out of every single film, this is probably the one which actually ended up getting the smallest cinematic release. I think over here, I think the Belmont and maybe a few independent cinemas had it for about a week. But I think it was the one that was the most difficult to see in the cinemas. So do you think that it'll see a post-Oscar boost, similar to, say, Parasite a couple of years ago, which everyone had moaned about the fact that it wasn't in cinemas for so long, and then, Curzon played a blinder and basically released it the week that it won the Academy Awards. So do you think we'll see it back in cinemas?
Who does the kind of releases for Apple? Because I know we got a few over the past few years have sort of made their way into the cinemas, but not too often. Was it Vertigo that does it in the UK?
It's something I should really know, but I can't think of off the top of my head.
I think Vertigo help with the releases of Apple products. And I mean, if I was Apple and, they are a huge tech company that love to make their millions, would you be more happy that people are going to maybe spend £6-7 to buy your streaming service to watch the movie, or would you sort of put it into the cinemas where you make a small potential return on that? If I was cynical, I think I know what Apple would be doing, and that will be sort of dropping into probably every single person that owns an Apple product inbox just now with saying, come watch this film on Apple TV right now. I'd like to believe it's coming back to the cinemas, but I probably don't see that happening, to be honest.
Amy, do you think it'll receive a bit of a boost in the cinemas, or because for accessibility, it would be good if everyone could see it, not just people who own Apple TV.
Yeah, it would be great, but considering Belmont already released their schedule and Coda wasn't on that list,
They must be looking rather foolish right now.
yeah, it might not have been their fault. The thing is,
no.
it seems like the Apple cinema releases seem to be more of their A24 films, like The Tragedy of Macbeth. So it could just be a licensing issue. I'm not entirely sure.
So no, we'll have to just see. I did notice that the Belmont were screening pretty much everything, trying to hedge their bets as to what was going to win, and then the Mist, of course, the one big one. But we'll see. I mean, I guess the big story of this whole thing is, I think originally it was like Power of the Dog was looking like it was going to be the most likely. Jane Campion was picking up most of the best director ones. But I mean, it has to be said, the swell of support was growing, and I mean, do we have to? I mean, I guess we have to take our hats off to Apple for playing a blinder of an awards campaign. I mean, they clearly got the film to the people who were who were voting, and it. I mean, how much do we want to credit Apple for the win? And also, I guess we can talk about the preferential ballot system, where ever since The Dark Knight was cruelly snubbed back in 2008, they moved to anywhere between sort of 5 to 10 releases for Best Picture, and instead of a essentially first past the post system, we went to the preferential ballot where everything was ranked, and that has meant that over the past 13 years, there have only been 7 times that Best Director and Best Picture have matched up, which means they're running at just over 50%. Amy, I'll come to you first as an Oscar expert and someone who looks at every single race every single year. I mean, how do you deal with trying to predict the best picture winner, because it has become increasingly more difficult, hasn't it? Obviously we had the infamous, probably the most infamous moment up until a couple of days ago with the Moonlight and LA Land, not LA Land, well, essentially, La La Land result a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and that's why this year's been so tough, because a lot of us have been so dependent on stats. Like, how many nominations did a film receive? How many wins has it received up to a certain point? And I think that's where a lot of us got tripped up this year, was just thinking, how does a film that only got support from supporting actor and adapted screenplay beat a film which somehow got in for production design and sound, which Power of a Dog managed to do? Like, there was a clear swell of support for that film within the Academy. But you also have to look at the release schedule, because usually it's like the fall film festivals that make the impact. And yet, Coda came out at Sundance back in January 2021, dropped on Apple TV in August, and then was kind of forgotten until this swelled momentum. And it's definitely a very weird year, and I think it's something that we're going to have to consider every year moving forward now, is which film has a passion, and is that passion big enough to beat something that might be a lot more technical.
Yeah, because I mean, Lee, let's come to you, because what are your thoughts on Apple's campaign and also the preferential ballot system? Because, as you know, I think a couple of years ago I correctly predicted that Parasite was going to take it due to the preferential ballot system.
Sometimes you see it with these. Like I'm never kind of followed the minutiae of how these things work as much as yourself, but I always kind of sometimes think you see a bit of a spread with these sometimes films, like where, you know, you can almost imagine it in people's heads where they're like, they want to give a little bit of something to everyone. Obviously, Belfast won Best Original Screenplay, Power of the Dog got Best Director, Dune got all the technical awards, which I think everyone would have predicted. Drive My Car gets Best International Film. King Richard will give that sort of Best Actor nomination. West Side Story wins Best Supporting one. You can almost just see that, like, oh, we enjoy all of these films, or perhaps there's not a huge standout perhaps in people's mind, and they just want to kind of spread the chips, as it were. So in a way, it made sense to me that Coda was like kind of odds on to get something from that. The fact that it was maybe nominated for only just a few awards made it more likely to kind of get kind of lumped on, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess it swept the awards, winning every single one that it did. I'm not sure, was the last time that I know a film did that? Was it Return of the King back when I got 13? I don't know. But yeah, I think for me, the preferential ballot system, it does kind of throw things up in the air, because, you know, I think with La La Land in the Moonlight year, there was a lot of fans of La La Land, but by the same rationale, there was a lot of people who are not a fan of musicals, and therefore were potentially going to put something like that. A more divisive film is going to be at the top for a lot of people, but at the bottom for a lot of people. Whereas something like the year that Green Book came through, it was probably it's an okay film. It was well liked by a lot of people, so it was probably sitting around the middle. And so it's always something around about. I guess Coda is, I mean, certainly from a screenplay perspective, it's a very sort of safe film, and that it sort of follows certain points and hits the beats and everything, and does its job incredibly well. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to see. I mean, I'm going to ask you at the end, I know, what are your predictions for next year? You know, award season starts, the Oscar season starts again. Although it actually starts today, technically, because this episode comes out on a Wednesday, and Oscar Isaac is in Moon Knight for 6 weeks, so we've got another mini Oscar season coming up as well. So in terms of other sort of Oscars that came out on the night, were there any particular ones that you were happy with, Lee? What were some of your favourite wins?
As I say, I think Best Supporting Actor to Troy Kotsur is his last name. I mean, I thought, you know, it was a sort of relatively weak field, but I don't want that to sort of put down his performance. But I mean, it's one of those things, like, I know there's been this weird trend the past weeks. As I said, I saw the film back in June time or something around that at Sundance London, and it was like, good film, I enjoyed that. But like, the one thing I particularly loved about that film, the lead actress was good, was just him. I was so invested in his performance, and, you know, I just kind of, you know, for a film that I was just not enjoying for the first 25 minutes, I felt a bit emotional at the end of that movie, and a lot of that was down to Troy. And, you know, when he sort of started to get that momentum, it was impossible not to root for him and that performance, and, you know, everything that, you know, to go along with representation. That's always important, but he deserved it 100%, and everything else is a huge bonus on the back of that. And I'm not going to butcher her name, but when he was like announced that he'd won in sort of sign language, you know, it's interesting. You're watching that video, and I think it's Cody Smith McPhee seemed a bit kind of confused at what was going on, but I think when everyone realized, it was a really kind of powerful moment. And again, it's one of those things, again, representation matters in little ways. It would be so easy to just do the conventional format of like, we're going to announce it, and then someone's perhaps maybe going to give him a nudge or something like that. But that's the way to do it. If you're going to give someone the greatest moment of their life, do it that way. So that was a real highlight for me out of the whole the whole series. There was nothing else beyond that kind of made me necessarily excited or surprised. I think it was a solid year, I guess.
Amy, what about yourself? What were your highlights from the awards?
I'd say Dune winning 6 awards. I only actually had it predicted winning 4 or 5. So the fact that it actually pulled out 6 wins is incredible. Like, to me, that should
That's
be
the
Best
real
Picture.
Best Picture Oscar. To quote Ricky Gervais from The Office, this is the real quiz. This is the real Best Picture Oscar.
Yeah, it should have won Best Picture in my opinion, but I'm just glad that film got as much recognition as it did. Yeah, the winners are just kind of predictable. It was what we were sort of expecting, but I mean, Dune is my favourite film of the year. Drive My Car is my second favourite film of the year, so to see that also win, like, I'm, very, very happy with the results in general.
Yeah, for me, Hans Zimmer winning Best Score because it's been far too. I think the last time he won it was The Lion King back in 1994. So he's done some incredible scores since then. So it was great to see him awarded. I was happy for Jessica Chastain. I think she's a great actress. Potentially, she's done better performances, but it did throw up an interesting stat that out of the actresses from The Help, everyone's won except Bryce Dallas Howard. So the campaign for Jurassic World Dominion Best Actress starts now, I guess, for next year to see it. But there was some people which I've been rooting for from the start, which it didn't happen. But I guess it's just nice to be nominated, isn't it? So we move on to the ceremony itself, which was controversial from essentially the moment it was announced. Several very interesting decisions along the way. The first sort of big one, I think, was the decision to not screen every award live. 8 awards were given out in a weird pre-hour and then sort of edited into the show later on. A lot of people were upset by this. As Scots ourselves, we are probably quite familiar with this happening to the BAFTAs year on year. We don't even get the BAFTAs live. It's on a 2-hour delay, and they still can't even put in all the awards in order. We just get and also presented on this evening. So, Amy, what did you make of this decision? And I guess given your experience with the BAFTAs sort of beforehand as well.
Yeah, I hated this. It was so weird just reading all the winners the hour before it went live. And it only took like 30 odd minutes for him to get through it. And then somehow the ceremony still ran 30 minutes over, which just defeated the entire purpose of not having the awards shown live. No, I felt like this was a complete insult. When they were talking about this idea, they were like, we're not going to cut the speeches, you're going to get to see them in full. The speeches were cut. The makeup speech was cut. They cut out the fact that they were talking about the below the line categories. Riz Ahmed's speech was cut, which, how dare you cut Riz Ahmed's first Oscar win speech. I felt the editing of this was extremely poor. You could tell that they were rushing through these awards. It just seemed like there was much less focus, and it underplayed Dune's major wins. Like, it won 6 awards and it only got 2 of it presented live, and it just felt like they just kind of brushed that film aside considering how well it did on the show.
Yeah, and Lee, what did you make of this decision, which was supposed to be, the biggest night of the cinematic calendar, a celebration of movies, and then not to celebrate all aspects of the filmmaking process to the same level?
It's genuinely a disgrace, isn't it? It's stuff like that just makes you just feel very cynical, disconnected from the whole thing. I mean, you see it, the people that are up all night, and no offense, Amy, that are like live tweeting it, watching it, these people are like nerdy people. Give the people what they want. They want to see like the sound mixers getting their dues, like Hans Zimmer getting his things. Like, give the people what they want. Like, no one's tuning in for like some of these big dogs. Like, you've got to wait. You get your little sprinkle at the start with supporting actors, and then you get the big ones at the end. Just put that technical stuff in as well. Like, these are the people that make some of the best films of the year. And I think it was Del Toro that I saw that was just like, he planted his bum in his seat like an hour early, and he was like, I'm here to support these people. And quite right, we should be there to support them too. It's meant to be a community, and the amount of work that some of these people do. Obviously, I'm an outlier here. I wasn't a fan of June Part 1. But, like, the work some of them did was absolutely incredible. Why not honour it? I would rather watch that than some terrible skit, or I watched, like, the James Bond, like, montage they did for a couple of minutes. Great, but I could watch something like that on YouTube. Like, it's no consequence whatsoever to me. Just, it's really amateur, disgraceful, poor, and, you know, it just shits on an entire industry. You know, the amount of people that have, you know, as much as you want to talk about, you know, people having to work from home, like the amount of people in the technical world that have had to like adapt and move to working from home, you know, they perhaps don't get the joy of going to sets or their workplaces. Like, this is their moment in the sun. Give them that. I was just really just pissed off on their behalf, and I hope they've learned a significant lesson and solidarity with those that protested.
Absolutely. And speaking of amateur and poor, Amy, what did you make of the hosting this year?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I was actually optimistic at the beginning when it was just the three of them on stage doing the opening monologue. That kind of worked. And then it just fell flat when they added individual sections. I think they crumbled under the pressure, which, in fairness, it is a lot of pressure, and there's a reason why nobody wants to host the Oscars anymore. But Joe, the Kirsten Dunst thing, I get that it was a gag, it just wasn't funny. The last Joe joke was not funny. It wasn't even just the hosts, like some of the presenters of the individual awards were also not great. I'm not just talking about the big incident of the night. Animated feature, they basically made it sound like animation's only for kids, and you have Flea nominated, and you're making it a big deal about Disney. That is an insult, not only to Mitchell's versus the Machines, but especially Flea. And it seems like everyone's kind of brushed it to the side except the animation branch. I just felt like that was a complete insult, that entire presentation. It was just so awkward to watch. Like, everyone in my room was just talking over the host because we just kind of gave up with what they were saying, which is not a good energy to have.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched some of the gags and stuff like that, and I mean, I think they fell kind of flat in the room, and it certainly seemed they fell flat on the TV as well. But I think a lot of people have been talking about, you know, the fact that, you know, this is meant to be a celebration, and all the jokes were really just taking aim at slagging off the films that were nominated and stuff like that. And I think, I mean, I guess there's one person who's maybe particularly responsible for this over the last decade, and that is Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes. But I think that is his particular style of comedy, and I think it works for the Golden Globes, given what the Golden Globes, well, were anyway. But I mean, if I think back to my favorite Oscar hosts and stuff like that, it's people like Billy Crystal, sort of Steve Martin, who made jokes, but they never felt like mean or sort of like wicked and stuff like that. It was always sort of very light-hearted. So, I mean, Lee, what do you think of the comedy and this sort of roasting style of comedy? I mean, it doesn't work for the Oscars, does it?
No, I like a good roast, but it's like, it's got to be an appropriate forum. Like, it's not on Comedy Central, you know, it's not sort of like William Shatner or someone like that that's your audience. Like, you have these kind of, it's as funny as it is to perhaps be on the outside and go, oh, it's funny because they've got big egos and they're like these glamorous, amazing stars, and someone's like highlighting their hypocrisy. It's like, I can see better jokes like that on a daily basis on like Twitter or something like that, so don't bother. And, you know, what works for Ricky Gervais, you know, he has many flaws, but he's good at what he does in that respect. So just do your own thing, play, you know, hire a host and play to their skills, as opposed to feeling that you've got to be edgy or something. You know, I would personally rather see a you know, pair of people like you on there that like they're happy to be there, we want to celebrate the films and champion things, and, you know, share the love for whether it's a Flea, etc., or a June. You know, that's more interesting to me. You know, it's always that get people on that are excited and proud to be there. Then you even see with Sky, like random comedians that have not seen the films or at all, and they're weighing in on it. It's just no interest to me whatsoever. You just feel like that old person of like just in the back going, just get on with it. Like, I'm not here for that nonsense.
And I guess the decision to tailor parts of the ceremony to a younger demographic, thinking of the Steve Buscemi meme, how do we do, fellow kids? I mean, did it work? I guess one of the big talking points was the idea of we'll do a public vote. And I mean, if anyone has ever seen the ship called Boaty McBoatface or Brexit, allowing the public to vote on stuff is never a good idea. But to basically indicate that you're creating an award to, give Marvel something after, creating a billion-dollar film that's, after the pandemic, to then see it lose out to Zack Snyder fans. What did we make of this decision, Amy?
This went as horribly as it could, and I'm very happy about that. Yeah, everyone in my room is asking what the hell Minimata is, and I was like, I can't explain this. I don't know. Yeah, like, the Academy deserves that entire thing to have gone wrong. Same with a We Don't Talk About Bruno performance, which should have been a slam dunk. I still don't get why they did it. And they throw Megan Thee Stallion in to a kids song that they've been hammering is targeted for kids or bringing in a young audience. They didn't even really do the song. I was so confused. It was such a bad performance. And just very, very strange. I don't get what the decision was there. Same with the, anniversary clips that were really poorly edited. The James Bond one had Tony Hawk come out to present it. When Rami Malek is in the audience, I don't get it. I don't get what the decisions were to have these extra performances in that ended up dragging the runtime and weren't even good.
Yeah, it's gonna be a case of we don't talk about this year's Oscars probably, rather than we don't talk about Bruno in the future. Lee, what did you make of their decision to try and capture the youth market?
As someone that recently had to have something explained to me about who is Bruno, or we don't talk about Bruno, like someone posted that, I was at an Instagram video, and I was like, I don't get it. Who's Bruno and stuff like that, and I had it explained to me. And
did you think they were talking about Sacha Baron Cohen's?
Yeah, I just didn't know what was going on. And what was it, the thing that began with M? I didn't know what that was about either. Yeah, I just felt every inch some of the references that I saw kind of going on. I really have no idea what's going on here. And as I say, it's like, I think you mentioned it, Amy, like this pandering towards Disney, etc. It's like, yes, I know that it's on AMC and wink, wink, nod, nod, but it's just so tiresome and just not interesting whatsoever. And it's just like, again, young people, it's hard enough to get them to do anything. Young people are not watching the Oscars. They'll maybe be watching little TikTok breakdowns, because I think they did a partnership with that where they made some sort of TikTok influencers did some Best Picture style thing. That probably works, but young kids are not watching the Academy Awards. They have a million better things to do, and I'd probably rank playing video games and those type of cliches well above it in their Sunday night plans.
Yeah, you'd probably need someone like Tom Holland singing and dancing his way through the entire show and coming out dressed as Rihanna again in order to get the kids watching, I think. But of course, everything that happened in the Oscars, including the awards, was kind of overshadowed by one big Fresh Prince-sized elephant in the room. And this was Will Smith reacting to a joke about his wife made by Chris Rock. And, we could spend, hours talking about whether it was staged or fake. Chris Rock plants his foot before he comes up and kind of leans into it. But then I think the stuff that was said kind of indicates that it was for real. I mean, I'm going to go to you first, Amy, because you were watching it live. I mean, what was the reaction where you were watching when that happened?
Complete shock. The thing was, I was chatting to the Next Best Picture team, and they're in America, and it was censored there. They didn't actually hear what Will Smith said, so I kind of said to him, yeah, this was really awkward. They did not censor it here. Our stream actually cut off a few minutes later, I wonder, just to see what was happening, to see if they could cut back, which was annoying because it cut into Questlove's incredible speech, but that's another matter. Quite simply, I don't want to add a narrative to whatever happened. I think this is something that needs to be sort of dealt with the Academy and with all of our teams and with them personally. I don't think this is a place for the internet to really give advice. And we don't know what the hell's going on in our lives. I think Will Smith's had. I mean, this is supposed to be a celebration of this entire year. We've all said this since we knew his role. This was going to be a coronation. And for it to end on a note that it did, it's just heartbreaking in so many levels.
Yeah. Lee, what did you make when you read the news in the morning and then watched the clips?
Well, I can go one better than that. Like, I had no intention of obviously watching the Oscars. I had a 5:45 a.m. train to get back from London to Edinburgh, and I had to kind of factor in time that I wanted to get like a prep breakfast before getting on my train, and I like the underground wasn't necessarily running till a certain time, so I got up at 3:30 in the morning, and my alarm kind of went, and I just started like scrolling at my phone. You know, the Oscars were still up and running, and I think I kind of dived in just as it happened, where I just got like saw my whole feed was like, oh shit, oh my god, what's happened? And so I kind of just started watching some of it on my phone, and I had probably a similar reaction perhaps to yourself, Dallas, if you watched it live, where I was like, is this a work? Is this a shoot? And then, as Amy said, when you heard the back chat, it was very much that it was real. There's so many takes on it, and a lot of them are quite tiresome in stretches. It was an inappropriate joke and an inappropriate reaction, and as Amy says, the right thing will hopefully get addressed by the Academy Awards and so on. But it's best to kind of think at the moment of like, it was just bizarre and insane, and like it will certainly, I think the one thing that Chris Rock said that was right, whereas he was like, oh well, this is going to be a moment for like a lifetime or something like that, and I don't think anyone could remotely disagree that this is going to kind of live on for forever.
I just think it's a real shame that so many people's sort of good night was overshadowed, and everyone's talking about this rather than talking about all the people who won their awards and stuff like that. I mean, I've got opinions on the whole other thing, and sort of seeing how there's a reaction just afterwards, and yet the reaction of the same person at parties later, it just seemed a bit off to me. But guys, like I say, it's their own private life, so we're not going to speculate on that. It's just a shame that it had to overshadow so many other people's achievements, and in particular, the people who worked on King Richard probably more than anything else, having their sort of moment sort of taken away, which was a shame. But I mean, it does leave the Oscars in an interesting situation. I mean, where do we see, or what do we see the role of the Oscars potentially in the future? Lee, what do you think the Oscars need to do to stay relevant, and is it not to try and court that to get down with the kids?
Yeah, stop trying to be obsessed with being relevant and getting like, this idea that we've got to have millions and millions of people viewing it and engaging with it, etc. Like, no, just do the it doesn't have to be anything other than like, here's the awards, here's some montages, let's celebrate what's hopefully the best in the class of all these different categories. Like, that's the thing. Like, don't think that it's the youth that you're chasing and so on. You're essentially appealing to the three of us in this room that are interested in filmmaking, and we might disagree with the awards and so on, but I used to think of it like the BAFTAs was like an interesting award ceremony, and then it became obsessed with chasing it, and that there was certain things had to be allocated to certain people and so on. But not to sound like a full hipster, but you just see like the independent like Spirit Awards and things like that. It just seems like pretty cool. Like, they just do their own thing, have some jokes, give out some awards, some films you've heard of, some of the films you go, well, that's only chance of award recognition this year, good for it. And that's what appeals to me. Just do that, just do the best and celebrate the best, and try and ultimately make sure that you've got diversity within the films that you've picked, and the winners as well. And there's many ways to go around that. That's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. And Amy, what would you like to see from next year's ceremony?
Oh, I have so many ideas, and I'm actually probably going to write like a piece somewhere on how I would fix the show. But somebody came up with a great idea on Twitter yesterday. Let Lady Gaga host it next year. And I think that is brilliant, because not only would she bring in the young demographic that we're looking for, I think she would do such a good job at actually honouring these films. If you haven't seen the Best Picture presentation yet, watch that with her and Liza Minnelli. She is absolutely wonderful at sort of helping Liza announce this big award and still honouring her. Like that little "I got you," it makes me cry. I absolutely loved it. And that's the sort of person Lady Gaga is. She loves legacy. She loves working with these legends and she loves honouring them. And that is what we need the Academy to do, is actually feel like we're honouring cinema and honouring the legacy that the show is. I feel like Lady Gaga would put on a hell of an entertaining show with some incredible performances if they want that. And she wouldn't go down the route of cheesy, horrible jokes which kind of poke fun at films. She would instead embrace it, and I think that's exactly what we need. So if I was the Academy, I'd be looking at Lady Gaga and getting her signed on now for next year.
And do you know what? If she needs a co-host, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but I bet Jared Leto would do something pretty interesting alongside her. Like, I love those two in House of Gucci. I know it's got its detractors, especially him. He was fantastic in it. Just give him carte blanche, throw the two of them together. I would stay up and watch that one without having an excuse to get up for a train in the morning. I'm going to double down on that.
So Lady Gaga and then Jared Leto, but only Jared Leto as Paolo, in character the whole time as Paolo.
Just let him do whatever he wants. I bet he would surprise us with, give him a year to prepare. God knows what he's going to method act in that year, but I bet the payoff will be fantastic.
Yeah, no, actually, Lady Gaga is a good shout because, she clearly is respectful for the older audience, but can get the new one. Because, I'm thinking back the last time there was probably like a really successful host. It was probably Hugh Jackman. Again, he, comes from a song and dance sort of theatre background as well. So clearly they need someone who's comfortable at working the stage and working the audience because, you can be the greatest actor in the world, but I've noticed 10 out of 10 times you put them in front of an auto cue, half of them will crumble or look incredibly stilted. So you need someone who's good at that. I was thinking you bring Hugh Jackman back and sort of team him with Ryan Reynolds and just have them banter back and forth for 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours.
No Ryan Reynolds. No, I'm objecting.
That's lost your vote. Okay, cool. So we're going to wrap up now, but basically one sort of big question for you. What's going to win Best Picture next year? Lee? He's now struggling to think of films which are going to be out next year.
The new Robert Eggers movie. I've heard it's basically unwatchable for people that don't have a degree in Viking history. So I think that would be a chaotic choice. So I'll go with that one.
I guess right now I'll say Killers of the Flower Moon. Apple clearly have shown they can campaign, and it's Scorsese, and it's probably the biggest cast of the year, so why not?
Okay. I'm going to go with Damien Chazelle's Babylon, movie about Hollywood.
I'd love that.
Definitely. So I guess we'll have to come back next year to find out if any of us were right. Lee, I think you're probably more likely at the Independent Spirit Awards, but never mind. Well, thank you both for joining me today. It's been good to have a tasty debrief on the Oscars. And Amy, it's an open invite. You're welcome back anytime if there's a film that you want to discuss. We'd love to have you back on as well.
I'd love to be back on at some point, yeah.
So thanks all for listening. We'll be back next week with Kim to discuss Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and potentially also Jared Leto returning. Yes, Morbius. Well, we'll see. See you next time. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.